What's going on, guys? Have you ever wondered how you could go about learning something? Well, I'm going to be learning React this week because I am in a coding boot camp and we're supposed to be self-studying with React. I've touched a little bit on React, but I'm going to be taking a course for React. So I'm going to show you guys my methods of learning and just my progress through learning React throughout this whole week. So here we go. Let's go ahead and dive into learning React. So if you look right here on my screen, this is a free, I love freecodecamp.org. They're a good YouTube channel. Some of their courses are alright, but a lot of majority of their courses, like 90% of them, are really spot on. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to be taking this course, and I'm also going to be taking a Udemy course as well. It's both React courses, so hopefully by the end of those, about maybe 60 hours worth of studying and going through different projects. Looks like in here we're going to be doing different types of projects, like we're also going to be using some type of Figma apparently. But if you look, we're going to be building a Airbnb clone, a meme generator, and a notes app. So that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm ready to dive into this, and then we're going to get straight into the next course, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how I go about taking notes and stuff. So if we open up a new tab and we go to Notion, if you look right here, I'm going to create a what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a template so that way you guys can download this as well. I'm going to make a separate video on that. If you click somewhere up here, that video will probably be posted, and you can see exactly how the template works and how you can utilize it for yourself and why it's so good for note taking. I got this template based off of Thomas Franken, and I kind of tweaked it for myself. So all these are my different notebooks, and if I click in here, these are just previous notes on JavaScript and stuff. But essentially, if we create a new one and we name it, React, kind of what we learned. I like to add random emojis, so I just click the random button, and then I'll go into here like this. And if you can see, I got a chapter title right here. So I click that. And now you can think of React like this as like a big everything about React, and then here are all the sub chapters within React. So I know random emoji, edit, and we can go ahead, and this will also generate a drop down for questions to link the video and to also ask any or check any to list any facts. So I like to list facts because I can just reference them. I like to do questions because it's gonna I can ask myself questions. So when I refer back to this, I can just drop down, see what questions I asked, and then ask myself. So see if I remember them or not. And then just the video link to see to reference in the future. So we could call this like React hooks, for example, and then I could start taking notes. So that's my note-taking strategy for this going into it. I'm also going to be doing don't get stuck in tutorial hell, guys. That's the last thing you want to do. So make sure the knowledge that you take with this, you're utilizing it. So that's another reason why this is a good course, because you're going to be utilizing what he's teaching you in this. So we're going to learn a little bit, and I'm going to essentially show you guys my progress that I'm making through it, and kind of sprinkle a little bit of teaching myself. I'm not going to teach you guys React in this whole video because it's not the purpose of this. Just kind of take you along my learning style, my learning journey, and show you how I learned React this week. So let's go ahead and hop into I'll pick up on the next portion where we're kind of building a project, and I'll kind of tell you guys what I'm learning so far. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so I just want to touch on a couple things right now of so far what I've learned. First off, I explain these things to you guys so I can help kind of reiterate it in my mind and understand it better myself, but also so those of you who don't know React yourself, you can kind of get this formed version of it, just kind of get straight to the point and learn exactly what it is that you need to know for this specific technology. So with that being said, let's talk about what I've learned so far. So with React, you have a couple things. React is just a way to so first off, why React actually? So why React? So React is composable. So what does composable mean? Composable just means that you can take something and repeat it over and over and reuse it. So that's what composable means, and this is just a way to explain that. So if you look right here, you can combine multiple components to build one big React component. That's what composable pretty much means. And so if you look, I have this main component which just returns a header that says, hello, my name is Will Swinson, nice to meet you. And then this is the ordered list, and then if you look right here when I render it out, I have the ordered list and then the main component. So you could use these multiple times. React allows you to do that, right? And then React is also declarative. So what does that mean? Declarative is just a way to essentially, so there's declarative and then there's imperative when you're coding, right? Declarative means that you just tell the technology what you kind of want it to do. It's kind of like these no code editors, things like that, and then it just kind of happens and it does a lot of things under the hood. Imperative would be the opposite of that, right? So React is really declarative, and that, as you can see, is just exactly what I explained. So what is JSX? JSX is another thing that's used in React, which is kind of the syntax that it uses, which is JavaScript XML. And what that allows for it to do is just for JavaScript to be a lot more declarative. So if you don't know what I'm using right here, this is Notion. I really like this for note taking. Yeah, I'll put a video link up here somewhere so you can check out the video on my template. And that's pretty much so far what I've learned. I'm gonna go a little bit into the code right here. So this React DOM.render renderer is essentially a method from the React DOM module, and it allows you, it takes in what you want to append to your body, and then it takes in what you want to append, and then this is what you're appending it to. So if you look at my HTML, I have this div called root, and then anything that I throw inside of here will be appended. And then so keep in mind this can only take one parameter. So if I wanted to add more, I would actually have to, you know, add more inside of here. Another syntax thing would be whenever you can only have one parent div. You can't have sibling divs. So if I did like this div, and now you see I'm getting an error because this is not how JSX kind of works. You need just one parent div. So in order to get out of that, you would just throw a div out here, or we could use something called a fragment, which looks like this. So if you see I throw this all the way down here, now that problem is solved. So either way, just keep it like that for right now. And so the way you get React is you could do, right now I'm just using CDNs. So if you look at my HTML, these are things you can get off the website if you go to React to the React docs. And as you can see here, I'm importing React and then React DOM and then Babel, which allows me to do some stuff with, I'm pretty sure, JSX. So that's so far all I've learned. With that being said, I'll catch you guys when I come back and show you some more of the stuff that I learned. Welcome back, guys. Here in the future, here we go. I wanted to talk about a couple things that I've learned. So I'm currently maybe 2 hours and 30 minutes into this video. And so far, it's honestly a lot of CSS so far, but it's just the basics. So far what I've learned is I'll show you guys exactly what's set up as far as how you can create your React app. So you could do a create my React app, or you could use something that I'm using, which is how I'm going to show you to do it, because I'm pretty sure create my React app is being pushed to the back burner and then V is being pushed forward. So V is something that's used so that way it'll create you a React kind of like environment already pre-made, so that way you don't have to build it yourself. So I'll show you exactly how that kind of works. So if you look right here in my terminal, I already have one made. This is just based off of, this is what I've been working on with the course, right? So I'll go over what all this is here in a second really briefly, but if you look, if I go back really quick and do ls, now this is where I have all my React stuff. But if I run an npm create v at latest, and then you can specify what you, so this will create a directory, right? And inside that directory, it'll look something similar to what I have right here. But if, like, let's say we make this test file, and then I hit enter, it's going to run. It's going to ask you, do you want to do vanilla? Do you want to do React? You can set up different types of frameworks and types of things in here. So just select a framework. Obviously, we're going to select React for this. You can use TypeScript with it. TypeScript. I'm not sure what SWC is, but for right now, I'm just using JavaScript, right? Hit JavaScript, and now it's running. So it says done. Now run cd test file, then npm install, then npm run dev. So cd test file, and then now if I do an npm install, it's going to essentially install all my things from the package.json, which is React, React DOM, all the necessary dependencies to run React. And once this is done loading, I'll open up the code editor. So that way you can kind of see what happened and and I can explain a different couple things within the file. Let's see. Give it a second. All right, here we go. So if we do cd test file, and then we'll actually let's just do cd test file. Okay, we're already in here. Tripping out. All right, code. And now if you look, so this comes, obviously we just did an npm install, so now we have node modules. We have this thing, a public folder. This is for maybe like your assets, your photos and stuff, and you can do this how you like, but this is just what I'm learning so far. And the source is you could also have your photos in here. You can do it a couple ways. The way I'm doing it right now is I'll create a new folder, call this components, and then I'll create my components in here. So maybe let's say I want to have a navbar, call it navbar.jsx, and then boom. Also a little neat trick, if you type RFC, hit enter, it'll import React automatically for you, and it'll create a function with that file name as the function. So it kind of gives you a little head start. So if you look right here into index.html, well, first we'll just start from the bottom. This is your Vite config. You can do a couple different things in here. I know you can set up like proxies and stuff, but that's beyond the scope of this video and of my knowledge, honestly. So these are your package JSON. These are all the dependencies that just installed, and then React to React DOM, and then some scripts. So like if I were to run npm run dev, hit enter, let it load a little bit. This is essentially like loading up a live server. So now if you see here, we have a server open, and this is just a basic server that comes with Vite, and we can just exit out of that. So now we go to package log. That's not interesting. So this is your root HTML. So if you look right here, we have that root that we created in the last one, but it's kind of already done for you. Then this is where we're pointing it to. This is the JavaScript. So if you go to your main JSX, you can see that it's creating the root. It's telling it where it wants to render it at, and then it's telling it what to render. So in this case, you're rendering your app. So your app component is pretty much everything where you're going to compile everything at. So if we go to your app JSX, you see we're importing a couple things. These are just the logos for it. But if you look here, if we wanted to, we could take all this off. This is just what's on the page. We could take all this off, and we could import, the nav bar if we wanted. And then if you see right here, we are getting an error. The reason we're getting an error is because we need to import the nav bar. So import nav bar, and then if you just say enter, it'll auto-complete it for you. So now no error, and if we were to load this, anything that's on the nav bar will be presented. And then if you look right here, we have also importing app.css. So if you want to do CSS to your things, boom, right here. And on the main page, we're importing index.css. You could probably just delete this because you're just going to want, just depending on how you want to do it, but that's the primary setup, and this is what Vite allows you to do. Vite is pretty cool. It just allows you to set up a really quick React environment or a framework environment. And we'll go over briefly what I'm doing on this other page. If we go over here, and we got to go run it, so we'll just cd back into the other one really quick. React course 2, and then code. And then if we do a npm run dev, all right. So if you look right here, we have a couple things. We just have the title. This is a nav bar, so I'll just go over it. So like you can see, I have my CSS right here, and I'm importing that into the app JSX. And as you can see, I have my nav bar component, my main component, and I'm importing those from components like I showed you. And nav bar is just a nav bar with the image and stuff, and main is just a heading with unordered list and just li list in it. So that's pretty much what I've learned so far at the 2 hour and 30-minute mark. I'll catch you guys a little further in, and I'll show you what I'm capable of then. Hope I'm helping you guys. Welcome back, guys. So I'm currently, I think, maybe 7 hours into the course now, 6 hours, give or take. Somewhere towards 6, maybe a little higher. But with that being said, right now so far I've learned mapping. So mapping over an array, so that way you can take that and you can pass those down as props. And I've also learned how to consume props, so I'll go over what those are. So essentially props are just ways you can pass variables to a component, right? So if you look right here, I have spots, which is coming from this, which would really simulate like data from an API or something. But this is just a dummy down version of it to do it for practice, which is what we're going over in the course. So this will basically, I'll show you the higher overview of it. It will take all this data, it'll map it out, make it into, and then put it into a card, and then it'll display that card, as you can see. Kind of like if whenever you're on Airbnb, if you look right here, Airbnb will kind of do the same thing. Most websites do this because all these cards and stuff are coming from like a database somewhere. So you have to have a way to map those out and display those on the screen. So that's what it does right there. So the way it does that though is it'll map over this array, and then at each spot, if we go back to the app, you see it's taking the item, so that's each object, and we just pass the whole object as called travel spots. So now travel spots is equal to that, and we also give it a key. So a key is, if you've ever done anything maybe like SQL or something, a key is just a single identifier um, for that specific prop that you threw in. So now this card has a key, so that makes it unique, right? And if you don't throw in a key, it'll give you an error, so that's kind of what that is. It won't stop your code from working, but it'll keep giving you an error saying, hey, you should probably give it a key. It might mess it up. And getting deeper into that is a whole nother thing. But anyway, you pass the travel card, and as you can see right here, this is going to return an array, right? And what's going to be returned is every time travel card, you can think of components as literal functions, because that's what they are. See, it's a function, and every time in the map, it's going at every element in the array. It's mapping over, and it's calling the travel card function, but it's giving it travel spots, which is, it's giving it all the information from that, which is what the item is currently, and then it's also giving it a key. And then if you go over here and look at the travel card, it's passing all that information down, and the way it does that is it gives it an object, which is just of all that data. So if you look right here, it gives it an object with all this data. That's what travel spots is. So if you go back to the travel card, we've destructured it. If you don't know what destructuring is, I would look that up on MDN. Essentially, it's just an easier way to get into inside of an object. And so now we say travel spots.image URL for the image, which is this, and then the title for this, and then the location for this, and then the date, and then the description. And every time it's being called, as many elements are in this array, and then we save. It's returning that, right? So then we save it to this variable because it's going to give back an array, and we save it to this variable called cards, and then we can use the curly brackets to use some JavaScript inside of our JSX, and then call them as cards, and that's what's populating all this right here. Because if you look, every time in travel card, it's returning this every time. So that's pretty much what I've learned so far. Those are what props are, and that's what mapping over props are. So I'll catch you guys here in a little bit once I've got a little deeper into the course to learn some more. I think we're coming up on state next. Welcome back. So we learned a little bit about state, as I kind of foreshadowed earlier in the past transition. So state is essentially a way that your app can be reactive, I guess you could say. So you can change the state of your app. So whenever you like click on a favorite icon or a like button, it changes from, you know, white to red. That's so prior to from right now in this video, we've only talked about static React pages, but we're kind of getting into the area where what makes React so awesome is the fact that you can change state and stuff. So you can change, you can kind of define variables and you can use them, and they can change at any moment whenever you want to do certain things, and it makes it way easier than just adding an event listener to than using vanilla DOM essentially, or vanilla JS with the DOM. So React's DOM is a little bit better in my opinion, I think. So I'm going to go over just a couple brief things. So you have this thing called useState, and the way this works is it is basically an array. You can think of it as an array like this, and inside of there's a result, and then there's a function like this. And what happens is we're just destructuring right here. So as you can see, I'm wanting to get the URL. So I can set a predefined value for what I want my result to be. So in this case, I'm making it an empty string. So I'm saying, hey, I want you to destructure this. This is now going to be called URL. And then this function name is going to be called set URL. Usually the convention is to make the function whatever the variable is called, but add a set to it, and making sure you keep camel case. So with that being said, it'll look something like you see up above, and then the default value for URL is an empty string. So if I were to console.log that, you see an empty string. So now if you see right here, a couple of extra easier things to do is, instead of having to add an event listener, like grab a DOM element and then add an event listener, you can basically just say on click right there on the actual element. So on click, whatever you're listening for, you can do change to a couple other things, but just for this scenario we're focusing on click. It's pretty much all that I've learned so far, other than change and a couple other ones. But on click, so every time you click the button, it's gonna take a function, and in this case we're gonna do the get new meme. So that's this function right here. So you could put all this in there, but that's going to make it kind of convoluted and a little too much. So we take off the default for the submit button, which is going to make it refresh every time. So we took that off, and then we got some data, right? This is kind of beyond the point, but what's more important happening is we got the URL from this data, and we're setting the URL link, which is what the URL is. We're setting URL, this variable, equal to that. And then if you look right here, on line 25, we're gonna render if the URL exists, which is true, and then we're gonna render out this image tag. And so if you look what I have here on this page right here, if you see what's happening right now is there's no URL, so nothing's rendering. But if I click this button, I'm gonna generate a image. So it's just memes, right? So if I keep clicking, it's going to keep changing the state. Boom, keep clicking, changing every time. So this is changing the state right here every time I click. And what that's doing, this is just getting me a new URL for the image to populate. So as you can see right there every time. So that is state in a nutshell on a very like high level way of explaining it. But I don't want to go diving too in depth in this, because it's just me kind of sharing my journey with you and sharing a little bit of knowledge, what I learned. And if I wanted to go really in depth, then I would do that in like a course or something. This isn't really a course, it's just me sharing my journey and trying to teach you a little bit along the way, right? So next we're going to be learning about passing down state and stuff like that. So I'll catch up with you guys when I'm a little further into the course. Currently I think I'm like 6-7 hours in, maybe. I've been following along on Scrimba and YouTube, so I'm not quite sure. But if you want to follow along with this course, it's actually on Scrimba. I'll leave the link in the description down below. Awesome course, I recommend it. Probably going to take Jonas Smetman's React course when it comes out too as well here pretty soon, so look out for that too, guys. Okay guys, we're back, and as you can see I have the Scrimba website pulled up for the course that I'm taking. I'm just using that as a reference for the code that I'm about to show you and the concepts that I'm about to go over. But the last place we left off, we were talking about state. So the next thing we started doing was I think we did conditional rendering, and I'll show you what that looks like really quick. Open up a quick replit. Conditional rendering is just so there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can use the and sign if you want to see if something's going to be shown or not shown, just one single thing. Or you could use a ternary operator, which is the question mark and the colon, and you can see if something's going to be turned on, if two things are between two things, if they're going to be turned on or not. So, for example, if I want my tweets for my tweet reply, or the tweet replies for my tweet to show, that could be like an and, because it's only one thing that I want to show. But if maybe I want two different color backgrounds, well, when I have this thing true, then I want this background color. When I have this thing false, I want this background color. It's kind of an example. That's conditional rendering, and that just looks something like this. Show you a quick example. Right here. So we might need to make a JSX file. Probably not. I could just show you. It might throw an error, but it's not gonna do anything. So that would look something like this. Obviously, since we're gonna make a component, we'll just say it's app, and then inside of here we have, maybe some state, state. Let's call it, and then set state, and we'll just say use it state, and then set this to empty, or we can set it to false, right? And then we can have some button. We're not gonna type all this out because I don't want to worry. I just want to kind of explain what things are. But this would have some function to handle click. So basically, when you click this function, you'll have it'll be attached to a button. When you click it, it'll change the state. So it'll say set state, boom, and it'll go through all that. And then once it's changed the state, it'll be able to toggle back and forth from true and false. So then you can have something like this. We're rendering a component, so we could say maybe we don't want our tweet replies. So state, which is what's going to be true or false, and then tweet replies, just like that. So if you're familiar with logical operators, then this will make sense, but I'll explain it really quick. So state, if it's true, then it's going to say and then it's just going to render this component, right? But what happens is, if this is not true, then it's just going to short circuit, is what it's called, and that just means it's going to kick out and nothing else after this and sign is going to happen. So the and sign will keep going until there's something false, and once there's nothing, then obviously it's done. So let's say we wanted to render two different colors, right? Or let's say we wanted to render two different objects or two different components. We could say, if this is true, we do a question mark. Question mark is pretty much like if XYZ, and then do this, else do this, right? So the if is this part, if this is true, and then that's question mark is saying if. So from question mark to state, if this is true, then do this. And then the colon, else, do this. So maybe we want to render just the tweet, because maybe it doesn't have any tweet replies. So I just want to render the tweet because there's no tweet replies. That might be a thing, So, or we could even add some more in here. So if dot length, maybe this is an array and it equals 0, then if the length's 0, then we don't want to render any tweet replies, so that's going to be false, and then it's going to render the tweets. So that's just something for conditional rendering. Next we have forms. Forms are their whole thing, but with forms you have, let's just go to the video really quick to show you the note that I have. For the forms, let's see. So if we go to this note right here, you can see it's a lot of stuff, but don't get confused. So this is just like form data that's handling our state. So you're gonna have a couple of things with forms. You're gonna want to make sure that you have some type of change event, so that way on change right here, it runs this, and what this is doing is it's taking the property name, value, and checked, and you're also gonna sometimes need type. So that way maybe you want to turn, like if the type of it is an email, then you want to do this type of check or adding value, vice versa, right? And this is just from event.target from the DOM, and we're going to set that form data. We're going to get the previous form data, because what if, let's say, we only edited this part? Well, yeah, let's say we left these two blank, or we messed them up or something, and we only edited this part. Like, it's only going to populate what you put in there, so it would just be left out, right? So then it's going to spread all the previous data, and then it's going to change what is being changed. Name, this is some type of conditional. It's its own little syntax. You can look it up if you want. I don't know too much about it though. What this does is it just allows for you to, whatever the name is at that current point where you're making a change, it will say if name is equal to joined, which is this join click, then we want it to be checked, else we want it to be a value, which is all of these other ones, because all of those have an input value, and then as you can see, the checkbox has a checked value, and that's just a boolean whether it's true or false. So every one of these have to have a name, and they have to match what you put inside the form data. And on top of that, you want to make sure that, remember that buttons inside of a form have an automatic submit type of submit. So if you look right here, handle submit on submit, we want to do event.prevent default, because the default for a sign up button is to just refresh after it's gathered the data. We don't really want that. So then we're just checking if the password, doing some other things once you sign up. Right, that's just some logic. This is just saying if the password is equal to the password you confirm, then say you successfully logged up. If it doesn't, then do not. And then if joins true, console.log, thanks for joining the newsletter. Basic stuff. It's kind of complicated, but also make sure that the value you put for these is also the value that you give it through. So the way it'll kind of work is like a pipeline. So the input will give your state data, and then your state will give your input data. So it's kind of like a trifecta, and it's confirming all the data, so that way you only have one truth that's coming from the state. On top of that, next is use effect. I'll show you how this works. So if you look right here, use effect is good for anything that has side effects. And when I say side effects, you could think of outside effects. And I say that because side effects are things that React can't control. These are things like fetching data. This guy has a good list of them. Let me see if I can find it. Right here. Local storage doesn't have control over APIs, databases, subscriptions like WebSockets, and syncing to internal states, right? So things like that. But a good thing to remember is that use effect can take control of that, and the way use effect works is, if we go over to the next one, right here, use effect takes in two parameters. One's a callback function, so you run that function, and let's just say we want to fetch some data in that function, so we could fetch the data just like this. Boom. And then on top of that, we need to add a second parameter, which would be when you want this use effect to happen. So if you put nothing, it's going to happen anytime something changes on the website. So if you kept it nothing, it's going to keep refreshing, because if you look, maybe I'll save it. Or here, let me throw a console.log in there. Not sure why I was throwing an error like that, but it'll keep refreshing and refreshing, because if there's nothing there, it's going to change on anything. If you put a empty array, because this is a dependency array right here. Oh, sorry. Well, that's a dependency array, right? So anything you put on there, the use effect depends on, hence the name dependency array. So if we just put an empty one, it's just going to load the first time the app renders, so just one time. And then if it re-renders any other times, it's not really going to affect it. And then if you put in here, let's say maybe we wanted to go based off the Star Wars data. Well, every time the Star Wars data gets updated in state, this will re-render, or this will rerun, and then it'll fetch more data. But that's not necessarily what we want here. So you just keep this empty, let it fetch data once, and that's it. So there's a couple other key things to remember with this is with use effect. Let's see. Use effect, you also want to make sure that you're fetching data. Also remember there's a thing called cleanup, right? So let's say for example you're trying to get, like, for in this example with the window width. So you're gonna have to add an event listener, which this guy has, and then you're gonna have to, you know, set the window enter width of the browser to this window thing, right? Or this variable, and change the state. But what's happening is once you close out the browser, you're not cleaning up, because this thing is actually dependent. It's dependent on something within the browser, kind of. So what I mean is you're gonna want to add some type of return function. And anytime you return from use effect, it knows that you're cleaning it up. It doesn't really know what you're cleaning up, so you have to be really imperative with that, which just means you need to explain exactly in detail what you want to happen. So as you can see, he's removing the event listener, so that way once the page like once he's doing something else, it doesn't redo this whole thing over and over. Alright, but a better way to think of it as whenever you're removing, so for example this toggle button gets rid of this window width tracker, and when you unmount something from the app, or you unmount a component from the DOM, you want to make sure that you get rid of any links, and this is kind of cleaning up that link, so that way you're not tracking something behind the scenes. For example, if you just, because this is taking care of it, so if this has got something, it's gonna, if you click this button, it'll toggle it off, right? So when you toggle it off, it's still in the background keeping track, but we don't really want that. It's kind of just pointless. So we want to clean it up when we unmount it, and then when we toggle it back on, it'll just rerun this use effect, if that kind of makes sense. So also one last thing to keep in mind with use effect is they can't really be async functions, but you can create a async function inside of here. So you can say async, and that's because imagine this is asynchronous, right? So then that kind of throws everything off. So imagine you're trying to return this, and this is asynchronous. Well, this isn't going to really return it's not going to return a value anymore. It's going to return a promise, because you made this an async function. So if you just come down here and make this an async function, then this can happen, and then this can be synchronous and return the value still. And you can await, like, maybe some data. So you can say async function, then create this function to, you know, get you some data. And keep in mind you do have to call it inside of here, just like that, because you're creating a function, you just haven't really called it yet. So that's something to keep in mind. In this scenario, this function is calling this function, so that's why it's a little different. Alright guys, so we left off right on hooks. So hooks, we did show use effect a little bit, I learned that, but I don't want to get too in depth because hooks are kind of advanced. You can also, there's a bunch of them, and you can also create your own custom hooks. So the thing with that is it can get kind of advanced, and plus I want to further my knowledge on it before I try and teach it to somebody. So I haven't really learned too much about the hooks. But also the next thing after hooks would be like React router, so ways to make multiple like page applications. So that would be something that I also want to talk about in more advanced video, where I learn a little bit more about that as well. And then lastly would be something like Redux for state management and things like that. Also, I've been dabbling in Three.js, so I'll probably make some videos coming up on that pretty soon. Also, I wanted to mention that after about 60 hours of full just basic React, I think I've got a pretty good grasp on it. Obviously, I'm not perfect because I need to make some more projects and utilize what I learned. Remember, guys, do not get stuck in tutorial hell. Utilize what you learn in projects. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll show you guys my advancements on that. But this is pretty much React Basics in 60 hours and what I've learned in that. So, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you want to join a community where you can learn a lot, if you're kind of don't know where you want to learn in software engineer, or you kind of don't have a roadmap, join the Discord. We have a lot of cool people in there. It's currently I think 100 and maybe 30 something people. And what you can do is we have a community, we have network events, we have coding challenge events or coding question events, Q&As, things like that. We also have some cool subscription tiers where you can also pay for like one-on-one mentoring, coaching from experts that have more knowledge than you, so that way you can learn and boost your experience way quicker, get past that learning curve a lot quicker. So if that's something that sounds interesting and intriguing to you, go ahead and join the Discord down below. You don't have to pay, but you do have to pay for like the one-on-one tiers subscriptions and stuff. But just access to the community and stuff is completely free. I always have people helping out and reviewing code and debugging and helping each other. And also like and comment, boost the algorithm, and get this further to more people, so that way we can keep growing our channel here. And also follow me on all my social medias. Twitter, I'm pretty active on there. LinkedIn, I'm really active on there. And Instagram, active on there as well. Follow those links in the description down below. And also links to the courses that I took will also be down below if you want to just take those, where they explain it more, probably a lot better than I have in this video. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in this video up here, where I'm talking about some stuff about coding as well. So if you're interested, join me there.